Hey everyone, my name is Austin. I'm a senior product designer at GitLab in the compliance group. Jumping into some news for this week. Uh, discovered this really cool tool that we talked about in Slack. Thought I'd share it with everybody else in case you haven't already noticed this, but there's now an option to select a reviewer from UX, which is awesome because this will help you if you're not just looking for me, but if you're looking for anyone to help review UX. You can also spin the wheel based off of some parameters that you put in and get someone random. So that should help you when you're in your MRs looking for a UX person to review it. That isn't me. Next, I wanted to share that we're keeping, or at least I'm keeping up to date with this KR focused on improving the MR widgets. So as we look to introduce status checks, we're going to stay in line with any design decisions that come through this. Currently, so far, I've just been trying to share the different states that it's going to appear in for status checks, and we'll see how it evolves from there. Next, I also wanted to share some more collaboration we're doing with the pipeline authoring group. So thinking about the holistic experience of authoring pipelines and how they merge together, I was coming up with a couple ideas of how we could demonstrate to users that there is an impact on the pipelines that they're working in. So some of these ideas include like showing a dedicated tab to view the preview of the compliance pipeline that's been inherited, or perhaps being able to show the visual of the compliance pipeline alongside the project's pipeline. This could get a little bit unwieldy, so being able to toggle it on and off would be nice. I was also thinking just putting in like the header, a little banner notification essentially telling you that this project's inherited a compliance framework and a way to access that one. So you don't have to keep in your mind like where it is or where it's coming from and just trying to create more awareness in the system. So those are some neat ideas that we're going to continue hashing out on and figuring out how we can make some good iterative next steps. We had a nice contribution come in on the collaboration on merge requests. So as we think about introducing features specifically related to compliance that impact the merge request experience, we're going to use these frameworks that have been established, or rather look for ways that we can properly engage like the code review group or source code, just so that we're making sure that we're not negatively impacting a feature set or degrading the MR experience any further. We really want to continue to bolster that functionality because it is part of the main backbone of what makes GitLab so great. There were two insights that we brought up in a foundation's office hours. The first is on a button variant. I won't necessarily open these up, but just know that we tend to overuse the secondary danger button or even the danger button itself in a table when there are a bunch of delete buttons. That's not something we should really scream about. So especially in cases where we use a modal to prevent a user from removing an object or deleting it in the first place, we can use the default button in those cases. Additionally, when we're looking at tables and at the responsive design of them, if the table needs to have data compared to each other, then it makes sense to make it scrollable. But if these can live as objects on their own, then they can collapse down into like a single card or a container because they're not necessarily needing to be referenced with each other. So it's more on a case-by-case basis, and we just kind of have to check it as we go. And this was a really neat issue that Pedro tagged me in. So 4 years ago, someone brought up the idea of status checks, and we are doing something very similar with status checks. So we're going to continue diving into this and sussing out some more of the feedback that users were looking for and understanding what were they looking for out of these webhooks. How could we maybe incorporate this into the existing workflow? I noticed there was an API that could be kind of hacked away at in order to block an MR. So we don't necessarily even have to provide the ability to block MRs. It might just be something that a user could configure through their API if they wanted to. So we'll look into this. I'm going to make sure this gets linked to our other stuff, and we'll see where this evolves into. So that wraps up this week. Look forward to catching up with you all soon.